The following program is brought to you by the Buns the Cat Foundation. At the Foundation for Buns the Cat, we think birds are jerks. It's also brought to you by Absolute Boredom.
Hey there, Cassandra here, the Vintage Arcade Gal, and like many of you out there, I am kind of stuck at home due to the coronavirus outbreak here in the United States and well, all over the world. I live in Seattle, Washington, which is somewhat of one of the epicenters of the current health crisis that's sweeping across the country. So firstly, I hope you're safe, and I hope you're taking care of yourself. I haven't made a video in a while because I've been very busy with school, which just recently ended. And I've actually been getting my teeth fixed. I've been going to the orthodontist and the dentist for the last 6 months, almost nonstop. And as you probably noticed, I don't have braces. So if I sound a little weird or different than I normally do, forgive me, I'm still getting kind of used to these things in my mouth, which is kind of tough when you're an adult dealing with this, but it's good. It's going to be a good thing. Anywho, what I wanted to do with these videos is usually a lot of times in the past when I've made videos, I show a arcade game project after it's been completed restoration wise or right at the beginning when I get it. So in an attempt to keep myself motivated to get these games done, since I have so much downtime right now, is I'm going to make a weekly kind of video podcast blog thing, whatever this we want to call this here, showcasing the progress of the current projects, which there are now 5, which is a lot, in the workshop, as well as there's going to be one incoming next week that I'm excited to show you because it's a super rare game and it's not something you see very often anymore. And hopefully you can learn some things and I'll learn some things and maybe learn from my mistakes or successes. I'm going to be using some new tools and techniques that I've never used before. So it should be exciting. So without any further ado, let's take a look at the 5 games that are currently in the workshop and the progress of those projects as of today. The first game I want to show you is this Jungle King cocktail. It's a Tato cocktail. It's a dedicated cocktail. I bought it in a rather haphazard condition when I received it. It had been converted into something else. And I decided, I didn't really know what to do with it. And then I decided I would just turn it back into a Jungle King, which was the original game of Jungle Hunt. Tato had to change the main character from this Tarzan-looking guy to more of a Dr. Livingstone type character because the people who owned Tarzan complained and sued that they were using the likeness of Tarzan without permission. As you can see, this cabinet's kind of clunky, this Tato design. It's got a lot of space in here. It's just a tiny 13-inch Wells Gardner monitor in here, which is the original monitor that I rebuilt. And close it, I have a new piece of glass on the top here, but it has no artwork at all. The original artwork was, unfortunately, the original top glass was long gone before I ever received it, and I wasn't able to find anyone who had a scan of this original artwork that was kind of this weird, swirly, kind of fancy pattern. I guess, I don't really know what Tato was going for there. So I've designed a custom top glass design for this game, but I have yet to receive the artwork yet. It's, I'm sure, on the way eventually. Let's take a look inside real quick. It's kind of a neat game, this thing. Okay, so underneath the first player controller, you can see I need to fix the control panels here, new buttons, and we rebuilt this, but we need to plug these holes and put a new overlay on here. Originally it was just black, like you see. There's a little door. What you have is the CPU, the main board set down here, which is a 4-stack board. It's very similar, Jungle King, to some other Tato games of the time period, especially Elevator Action. And down here to the right, this is a filter board that you see in a lot of these Tato games of the era. I've replaced the power supply. The Tato power supply in these games is pretty historically terrible, so we replaced it with a switching power supply to be much more reliable. And we've resoldered all the solder joints through that filter board, which are normally pretty problematic. So now the game is working great. when I got it, it was an elevator action and the board was not working, but I've gotten that board now fully functional, so I'm using it as a backup board for my elevator action upstairs. So it's good to have a backup, I guess. So and it just kind of goes back into there. It's a pretty neat design, despite that overall the game is kind of clunky to look at. It's not super exciting, but once that artwork gets on there, we'll apply that together, and this should look really nice and should be a nice addition to the collection. I'm a big fan of Tato games, so this will be fun to have. Okay, project number 2 is this former pack cabinet, which is being turned into an Arkanoid. I bought this game along with another game that we'll take a look at in a second, that at an estate sale, and it was in pretty bad shape. The game didn't work at all, and there's a lot of damage to this cabinet that I've since tried to fix the best I can, but it's not a very good example to try to restore back to a Miss Pac-Man machine. And there are so many Miss Pac-Man machines in the world, I don't feel too bad about making this into something else. And Arkanoid would have been a game that a lot of these games got converted into, along with a lot of other classic arcade games. Arkanoid was a very popular kit that came out in the mid-'80s, and I'm sure a lot of you played it. It's kind of a futuristic breakout type game, and it's a lot of fun. And it's one of my wife's favorite games, so I figured it'd be a fun addition to the collection. As you can see, it's fully working. It just looks like poo right now. We're waiting for the artwork. I need to do some painting on it as well, and a few more cabinet details to clean up and fix the cabinet. You can see there's been a lot of patchwork I've done on the cabinet, and back here there's still a lot of work to do. I've rebuilt the monitor. It's looking pretty good. It's a whole new power supply system, new wiring, everything in here. I gutted the whole cabinet from what it was. I was able to get the board that was in here to work, and I actually switched it back to a regular Pac-Man. The Miss Pac and the Pac boards are very, very similar, other than a tiny bit of differences, but I totally rebuilt that board. So now I have a regular Pac-Man board. I can plug that into my Miss Pac-Man if I get tired of playing Miss Pac-Man. So that was kind of a bonus with that as well. But this should be a fun project, especially once we get the side art, which is something pretty special we'll go into once it arrives. And hopefully we should see that in a couple of weeks or so. Oh boy, project number 3 is a pretty desirable one at that. It's a Donkey Kong, but it is a rather rare, hard to find red cabinet Donkey Kong. And you can watch one of my other videos about this, but in a nutshell, first early Donkey Kong machines made by Nintendo were red and not the traditional baby blue that they would all become. And there are not many red ones out in the world, and this is a real red cabinet. I bought this out of a barn, actually a legit barn find, about 10 minutes away from Nintendo's headquarters up here in the greater Seattle area. And as you can see, it's pretty far along. In a way, it's working now. It's playing Donkey Kong. I have the marquee and the new control panel and the bezel, and that looks pretty good, but there's a lot of hardware work still to do. It's going to need to be repainted. There's a lot of scarring on the side where someone had attempted to try to, I guess, fix it with some really cheap spray paint that doesn't match, and it may not pick up on the camera, but there's a lot of scratches and things that I'll have to sand in the laminate out and then repaint. And I'm going to actually use a paint booth. I'm going to make a paint booth and use a proper spray paint, not just like a rattle can spray paint, but like a spray gun with an oil-based paint, which I already have the paint actually for this. So we were just kind of waiting for it to get warmer so I can build a paint booth. And this is a pretty desirable game. Donkey Kong, obviously one of the all-time classics and very popular with a lot of folks. And this version, this red cabinet version, is considered to be kind of the ultimate version of this game just because of its rarity. And yeah, so this one is pretty far along, but it still needs a good bit of work to be perfect, and we'll put the side art on it as well once it's fully painted and gets new T-molding. You know, we need to rebuild the coin door, which is looking pretty bad. This game is a solid example, but you know, it still needs some work to do. Okay, on to the next project. So projects 4 and 5 we're going to talk about together because they're right behind me here, and they're basically just shells right now. This Moo Patrol is weird because it's not really a Moon Patrol at all. It's actually a Stargate cabinet. I bought this from the same estate sale that I bought the Miss Pac-Man that's now an Arkanoid. As you can see, it has a third-party Willis overlay. It has this weird marquee that has a little extra bit that I think is from Magic Sword to kind of compensate the difference. And it was a working Moon Patrol when I bought it. The monitor, which was a pretty good monitor, is now in the Arkanoid. The one that was in the Miss Pac had terrible burn-in, so I got that one working again. I don't really know what I'm going to do with it. And the Moon Patrol board, I just kind of filed away, and I'm using that as a backup for my dedicated Moon Patrol upstairs. But despite that, this cabinet, even though it's been painted black, is in incredible condition. A lot of these Williams cabinets tend to chip or break towards the bottom, and this one doesn't really have any signs of that. And even though it's painted black, you can see the Stargate artwork underneath there. Our Stargate upstairs, the cabinet is in terrible shape because it sat outside for 2 years before we ever got it. And we're going to strip this down and repaint it, re-stencil it, and make it look beautiful. And we're going to take the guts of our Stargate upstairs and put it in this cabinet. And then we're going to take that cabinet and try to fix it. And if we're successful, we're going to turn that into a Cloak and Dagger, an Atari kit that was made for Defender and for Stargate many years ago. And it's somewhat famous for the movie with Henry Thomas, I think, and Dabney Coleman are in that movie. But that's a long project out. But this should clean up really well. And it's just such a great instance of this cabinet. I'm looking forward to re-stenciling and bring it back to its former glory. Now the one next to it, maybe I'll kind of scoot the camera a little bit on this one here, is the Simpsons cabinet. And yes, this is the same Simpsons I had for a while. You can see it's been totally stripped and sanded on the sides. I have all the parts and pieces for this, and it's not as bad as it looks. This cabinet, though, does need some pretty extensive woodworking done. The front panel, this is totally smashed in, and I need to make a new one. And this is where we're going to use one of our new tools, which is a biscuit joiner, to fix the bottom of this cabinet. I've never done anything like that before, so we're going to learn together as we use the biscuit joiner. And I already have the side art, the control panel. I have new old stock Wico joysticks from the late 80s of all the right colors for the Simpsons, and new marquee from this old game, and it's going to be great once it's finished. And even though it looks like a mess right now, the progress on this one will probably happen pretty quickly and pretty fast once we get this one rolling. So this will be a great game, long overdue, and progress has been made on it. This one's been in the garage for like 18 months, but I did some work over the winter. Let's go up to the arcade real quick and look, and I'll show you a couple small things I want to do with some of the games up there. So we're upstairs in the arcade. Right now we have 18 games in our arcade, and the first game I want to kind of try to do some routine maintenance is our little battle zone that we just restored not too long ago. The problem is these controllers, they have a rubber bellows that allows them to move tautly, and the one on the left, as you can see, is totally destroyed. And it's been that way for a while, and this controller is actually taped up with duct tape or masking tape or electrical tape or something. Just the way I got it when I got it. So I want to replace these rubber bellows. There's a lot of reproductions of these out there. Should be a pretty easy job to do, but taking these things apart are actually a little more complicated than you might think. So that's the first kind of little maintenance thing we want to do up here. There's a couple other ones as well. We have this great little Centipede Cabaret here that is pretty much all original except for the monitor. And there's two things I want to address with this game. One is the monitor itself. It's a later CRT, I think was made in South Korea, and it's super, super jumpy. You can maybe even see it pulsing a little bit. I've had a lot of bad luck trying to get this monitor to become reliable. I'll take it out and rebuild it, and it seems to be fine for a while, and then it just gets crazy. Sometimes the screen will go totally white, and I think it has to do with the remote board. So we're going to take this monitor out, see what the heck's wrong with it, and try to make it more reliable. The second thing we're going to address with the Centipede is the control panel, which is a mess. This is the original overlay. I have a beautiful silkscreen reproduction overlay for this that I want to put on it. I've had it for like 2 years. I just haven't done it for some reason. So we're going to take this control panel apart, clean it out, rebuild it, restore the control panel, and make this game look fantastic, just like it deserves to, because Centipede is a great classic, and I love these Atari Cabaret cabinets. Here we have our monkey, and if you watch the video where we kind of built this thing almost from scratch, more or less, we have a custom bezel now that we've put in it that we really like. I designed the bezel and had it printed out by the folks at Escape Pod. And with this one though, the only thing it really needs is the joystick is terrible. This is a joystick I put in here, hoping to find a better joystick eventually. It's like a cheap Waco copy, probably from the 90s. And it's just terrible. So we're going to take this out and put a proper stick in it. This is kind of small beans as far as projects go, but we're going to walk you through the process just in case you've never done this, if you're a first-time restorer or maybe someone making a multi-kit at home. It might be kind of interesting for you. So if I get a really, really wild hair, I may attempt with our paint booth that we're going to build in the next couple of weeks to re-stencil and repaint this Miss Pack. A lot of folks kind of like the worn and weathered look of a game, and I get that, and I probably would leave this one alone because it is a nice, honest example of this game, and it's in pretty good shape, but the side art, unfortunately, has reached this critical stage where it's just, the paint is just flaking off and chunks. It's seen a lot of years, this lady, so maybe it's time to get a facelift, and we'll properly sand it down and fix the cabinet and stencil it properly, not a decal, although some Miss Packs, don't email me or anything. I know some later Miss Packs actually did have a decal and were stenciled, but this is an earlier one. It should be stenciled. The stencils are available, so we might end up doing that as well. So that's where we are at this point with the projects, and like I said, we have another one on the way. In fact, here is a sneak preview. I actually have part of the game right now. This is part of the cabinet that broke off many years ago. Maybe you can guess what game it is just by this small tiny part, this toe. And but hopefully we'll see that next week. But for now, that's what I have. And next week we'll go through at least one project, and hopefully we'll have that new game to take a look at, and who knows, whatever other ramblings I might have. So keep busy out there, keep safe, wash your hands, do all the stuff that people are recommending to you. Don't be a jerk, and don't be mean to people. Don't be a racist about the coronavirus right now. Just go out and stay safe and take care of yourself. All right, I will see you later. Bye.